Well, we're streaming according to OBS. We just got to wait for YouTube. YouTube's getting it now.
YouTube get it?
YouTube is getting it. You are live, it says. Very nice. Let me copy this and then.
We are live. And the crows have stopped. So that's nice. We had a bit of cry action a moment ago.
Yeah, they've calmed down, which is good.
I'll grab that link as well.
And let me just publish it to Patreon so that people who aren't in our Discord chat.
Says,
You can hear my super noisy keyboard here.
indeed. Alright. 2 people watching, though one of them could be me and you. 3. Alright, we definitely have a person in here now. I will say.
We sound like robots.
Oh no. Oh no.
Okay, what do we got here?
Change the encode rate.
No, we're fine on the encoder. Let me check audio. What's going on here? Audio bitrate.
It's not
Fine.
it's not that problem you had where you had to like restart the stream last time.
Yeah, it sounds like robots. I mean,
Give me a second. I'll investigate.
so we're using, for those people who have just joined us, we have switched to using a full PC for our streaming.
Apparently it's going worse.
Well, yeah, we always expect this stuff to happen. So Steve will give us an idea what's going on in just a moment.
Yeah, you have to restart the stream.
Testing. Give it a try now. See what's going on.
Do you have to? Is it the same link?
Yeah, it should be the same link.
Alright.
So you should go chuck it live and then we'll see.
Alright, I think it's fixed.
Is it good? Is it fixed?
I think it's... Yeah, it's fixed.
Fixed. Alright. Alright, resetting the stream
I
work.
don't know why
Yeah.
YouTube does that.
I closed and reopened OBS and we're fine.
Alright, resetting the stream.
Oh,
Oh, you're going to get mad feedback. We're going to get mad feedback. No. Alright, we're good.
alright.
Steve with his...
I had to check it.
Alright, so we've burnt... I don't know how long. 3 minutes fixing the stream, so all good.
Yep, that's
All
3
good.
minutes.
That's 3 minutes that people watching the replay will be loving.
Yep.
You
can actually cut that out, can't you, using the YouTube tools?
Oh, if I could be bothered, which I definitely can't.
God, that's for the patron members. Okay.
Right.
We are...
I think the streaming setup is much better though. We've got a nice 32-inch screen over here. We're running off a Ryzen 7 2700X this time, not the laptop we were using, so it's dead silent in here, encoding. And we're even just using the fast preset at 1080p 60 FPS, but I think I could even go medium, I reckon. It's only using 25% CPU, so...
It looks pretty good. I think it's good enough for just us two.
Yeah, and for the people...
Alright, I'm just going to reload this, and then we will be right to get started. Sorry to everyone who's just sitting there watching us waffle on and...
Oh, I talked a bit about a new streaming PC. I've got this PC in here as well for doing like reviews of monitors and stuff. Need a PC I've actually played games on, so
Okay.
PC's been good for that. It's my Ryzen test system. Good to have something in here.
Nice. Alright.
So everything is working according to OBS. No drop frames. Nothing serious is happening.
Okay. Well, let's get started. What do you want to start talking about first? Actually, we'd start talking about the RTX 2080 Ti. Was it...
Yeah,
Who said that theirs just died in the Discord chat?
it was Jared.
Oh, Jared. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, he bought that as well.
I think he might not have had the same issue that other people were having. Let me just check what he was saying.
Just another death.
flickering to black screen on and off. Different
Oh,
monitor.
okay.
Didn't lose signal completely, but there was noticeable artifacting. Changing to 59 hertz instead of 60, maybe fixed it. for
Okay,
him.
so that might be a driver issue.
Yeah, that does sound more driver issue than...
But still, it's annoying that there's, on top of cards actually dying, then there's just all these driver problems, which we didn't have with Pascal.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there's always a few teething problems, but they seem quite widespread. So, this morning I read an article on Hard OCP. You can probably screen share that.
I am just getting it up, and then we will put in this screen share.
They
No, I had a keyboard shortcut for this, but I don't remember. I think it was this. So, just see on your stream whether that worked.
Alright, I'll play. I haven't been playing the stream, but I'll do that.
So hopefully right now you are seeing
Ah, they are, yes.
Hard
Yep.
OCP. So he...
You got ad blocker on, Kyle's freaking out.
Yeah, well, I can turn that off for him, but
stream.
whatever. Ads are just, whatever.
You should probably whitelist Hard OCP.
I could do that, but it's just the default settings for this new PC. RTX 2080 Ti escapes testing by dying after 8 hours. So I think Kyle's been testing his 2080 Ti Founders Edition cards in like a Unigen stress test, right? Like a Heaven,
think
like
Heaven-
looping it.
The main point is he's bought his 2080 Ti FE cards.
Yes, and he's now gone through 3 of them. So yeah, he says here, we left the new card running the Heaven benchmark in a loop early Tuesday morning. About 8 hours later, we worked to find the 2080 FE card chugging along happily. It's good results.
So one of the main things to note here is that these guys have paid for their 2080 Ti Founders Edition cards. So they've bought them. I don't know if any or many reviewers have reported failures with the FE models that they got sent from NVIDIA. So I'm wondering if ours have been handpicked as the best of the best.
Yeah, so he's saying here that on Wednesday morning, he wanted to turn on his PC, and he has got a new one with Samsung memory.
Oh, okay.
And so it said, if our new 2080 Ti FE with Samsung VRAM had any temperature differences from the previous Micron VRAM card, we turned the test system on and we were not greeted with a post screen.
Oh, so the Samsung model failed as well.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's probably not the actual memory modules themselves then. Or
yeah,
memory
it's saying
chips.
we switched in my Micron VRAM 2080 Ti FE and the system posted just fine.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the first time I'm reading this article, so
Yeah, I skimmed it briefly this morning. It was very interesting. I didn't know that he mentioned... I thought when I skimmed it, they said they haven't had a Samsung fail yet. But
yeah,
my
so he
bad.
said here that he's owned 3 NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition video cards. 2 of the 3 have failed on us. So I think that must mean he had a Micron card that failed, and he's replaced it. They replaced that through RMA, and there's got a Samsung one as well, and that's now failed.
Right, so that's where I'm getting confused. So the previous article they did on the Samsung one was about the Samsung VRAM running cooler, and therefore they thought maybe NVIDIA is replacing the Micron cards with Samsung cards to address these failures. But it seems like that's not the problem, because the Samsung one died within 8 hours, which is insane.
Yeah, well, it didn't artifact. It didn't sound like an artifact. It just wouldn't post.
Yeah,
So
okay.
obviously he stopped running it, and then something happened, turning off the system. Something flicked a switch or something, and it
I know,
died.
and that's the problem diagnosing this, because there seems to be so many different problems with these cards that it's not just the Space Invader artifacts, the memory corruption issue. There's tons of other ones, and there's, I think Gamers Nexus touched on this again. I didn't really watch their video series, but they were talking about a lot of them being driver related.
Yeah, so I've watched his series. It's worth watching if you're interested in the issue, but he kind of split it into, I think there was the 3 main issues. The first one was the driver-related stuff, which is pretty much been fixed now, relating to G-Sync monitors and a few other things, multi-monitor setups for screwing the cards. Then he had one card that just would not clock above like 1300 megahertz,
Okay.
and he tried all sorts of stuff, and it was just he thought maybe there was a BIOS corruption issue that couldn't be fixed on the card.
Yeah.
But then most of the cards had that Space Invader
Yep.
memory artifacting, and he tried a whole bunch of stuff like chilling the cards down to like ridiculously low temperatures. Didn't seem to be a temperature issue. He looked at like whether it was, some sort of design issue with the cards, but didn't seem to be something relating to that. Like he looked at the serial numbers. There didn't seem to be any correlation there. He tried flashing a different BIOS on the cards as well to see whether it was that, and that didn't work. So it does seem to be memory related, but it seems that Micron and maybe even most of Steve from Games Nexus samples were Micron based cards, I think. But it just seems like there's some...
Yeah, well, if they've had a Samsung one die, that's...
but hard OCP having a Samsung
That's
one
not really
die.
definitive proof that it's Micron. And it's so complicated, like it could be the memory controller. And then it's weird, though. It's a weird one to narrow down because it really seems like for the vast majority it is the Founders Edition cards.
Yeah, and the PCB, not the cooler, because there has been those cards that are non-FE cooler designs using the FE board that have died as well.
Yeah, because you would think, okay, it's definitely thermals because that's what
they're using a
FE
unique cooler, right?
Yeah, but then it seems like maybe it's not thermal, so then it must be something to do with the PCB design. The Gigabyte 2080 that I had die used the FE PCB.
For the 2080.
For the 2080.
Yep.
But there's people that have been reporting these on 2080s and 2070s as well.
Yeah, so I mean, people are buying those cards less. I mean, there's...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It could just be maybe one component that they're using that's struggling. Like, it's in the memory pipeline, something along there that is causing the problem that, maybe another OEM hasn't used that specific component. Because I'm assuming when you buy a Founders Edition PCB that you also buy all the associated chips. They use the same VRMs, using the same other controllers that are on there. And it might be one of those.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that, how they do it. But after I briefly skimmed over the Hard OCP article this morning, I rang up Tim with an idea. I don't know if it's something we're going to do, but it was an idea anyway. And I was suggesting with our particular R2080 Ti Founders card, it uses the Micron memory and it runs scorching hot, like a 5-minute benchmark game, anything, and you can't touch the thing. It's that hot. The backplate in particular is just
I was saying earlier that I actually almost burnt myself trying to swap out a card, out the Founders Edition card, because the back is just... I had to get an oven mitt, and my girlfriend was like, what are you doing with an oven mitt in your office? I'm like, I'm switching out graphics cards. It's the hardware unboxed lifestyle, we need...
Fermi's back in town.
Yeah, we need our logo printed on oven mitts for our job. But...
Oh, could you imagine that meme? So, yeah, I've tested our card a bit, but I haven't done really, really long gaming sessions or stress tests with it. Tim says he stressed it for 5-6 hours.
Yeah, when I was doing like the Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed and all those game optimization guides, usually the way I do it is I just keep the game running for as long as possible and then just like switch the graphic settings and take captures, look at the captures while the game's still running in the system. So... I think it would have been running for maybe 6 to 8 hours in a game, like Assassin's Creed, just non-stop in the game. And I had no problems with the card. I mean, it was running really hot, like to touch, really hot. But I certainly didn't have it die on me.
So my idea was, given that Kyle's stressed all his cards overnight and it's managed to kill them, that... Because us just stress testing our card and saying, oh, it died, it's not particularly... useful, or I don't know, it's not that impactful, but I thought it'd be really cool if we set up a live stream of a system, maybe running the Heaven benchmark on loop with our 2080 Ti and just left that filming as a live stream on the channel and just played it for, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 days, and just if it survives 3 days, then I suppose give up on it, and then just conclude that, well, not all cards will die. If it died within 3 days, that would be insane. And that would be quite alarming if that happens. Because our limited test sample of 1, we kind of have to assume that it's a best case scenario, like we have a hand-picked, cherry-picked 2080 Ti.
Yeah, I mean, for what we've seen so far, it seems like you have a card and it has all these tons of problems, or you have a card that's like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be luck as a draw.
The 2080 that I had lasted through all my testing. I left it on for quite a few hours stress testing and pulled it apart, put it back together.
You overclocked it as well, didn't you?
Overclocked the hell out of it. And it was fine. And then it was about 4 days later, I'd been using it every day for testing games and stuff. And then it was 4 days later, it wasn't overclocked or anything. And it did the Space Invader thing. And then I spent about an hour trying to fix it, and it continually got worse to the point where I couldn't even install drivers on it anymore. So,
I mean, it could be something like a component that it's when it heats up, it's like on initial use, for example, it might be fine, but then somewhere in the cooling process, that chip has just been made wrong somehow, so that when it cools down maybe more rapidly than usual, then something's just breaking inside. Like it.
yeah, I'm not sure.
That could be the issue, and then maybe that was like, a certain batch of that chip on some cards was used, and then that was the problem. But it certainly seems a very strange issue, and the luck of the draw is really bad for people buying it, because like
Yeah.
you don't know whether you bought one now. You buy one now means you're not going to get the problem. You could potentially still get the problem today because no one's really figured it out.
Yeah, well, every time I benchmark with my card, I've been using it to test Hitman 2 and Battlefield 5 multiplayer CPU performance testing. And yeah, every time it gets really hot, I'm like, is it going to go? Is it going to go, or is it going to keep working? So I haven't, put it this way, I haven't got a lot of confidence in it at this point.
I think confidence across all of the Founders Editions would be fairly low. Even if your card, you've tested it a lot and it still works, you'd still have that niggling sort of thing in the back of your mind going like, is this going to fail at some point? Like if I use it too much, is it going to fail?
Yeah.
And that's not something you want with the high-end product. You want to know that you put it in your PC and it works.
Yeah, it'll take endless abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lewis would be an interesting person to have a look at him, see the dead ones, see what he thinks. But I think it's really going to be very, very difficult for anyone without the kind of diagnostic tools that NVIDIA would have at their disposal to work out exactly what's happening with these cards.
I think the interesting thing is whether NVIDIA has figured it out yet, because it still seems like people are RMAing their cards, get back a card, and that card still doesn't work.
Yeah.
So are they just doing a luck of the draw? Like you get a card in, they're just like, okay, next one off the production line is good to go, or
that's
they're
what
actually figuring it out?
I thought the way this probably would have played out, or how it would have gone down, was that there was a manufacturing problem. There was a defect with a batch, or there was something they had to correct.
Yeah, some chip is
and
broken.
I thought after a few months they would correct it, sweep the issue under the rug, and say it was really just a non-issue. It only affected a few cards. They'd replace the defective cards with the new batch. They'd take a bit of a hit on margins and move on. Except, yeah, like you say, I'm not even sure if they've worked out what's going on, or know what steps to take to correct it.
I think as well they were sort of denying the issue for a long time, sort of saying, not really denying it, but just sort of saying, this is only affecting a small percentage of cards. And I'm sure in their process, for any product launch, they've received RMA cards.
Sure, yep.
So, I think it sort of might have taken them a bit of time to sort of go from, okay, we're getting a few RMA cards back like we would normally get, to, oh, hang on a sec, actually lots of people are having these problems, or certainly a lot of these problems are related. Like all the RMA cards we're getting back have got the Space Invaders issue, for example.
That's what I'm still... As far as we know, the Space Invader artifacting problem is still predominantly an FE card issue.
Yeah.
So it really has to be either their cooler or their PCB design, or some component they're using on the board.
Yeah, and I said earlier, probably not the cooler, because we've seen those non-FE cards that use the FE board also failing. So it's likely...
Yes.
It's likely something in that board.
Yeah.
Some chip. I'm not thinking... I don't think it's related to that PCB routing thing that people are saying the memory was overheating, because it sounds like some cards that have... Because all cards are made the same. So I think that, even when Steve was doing his investigation, chilling those cards, it didn't seem to affect or help that issue out too much. So
yeah,
I'm thinking that there could be some chip on the board that's not related.
It could be any number of things, really.
It could be like a voltage controller or something.
It could definitely be a power delivery issue. It could be undervolting things. There could be a lot of volt, because there's...
Or it could have overvolted the memory from the get-go and burnt it.
Well, it could have over or under. Voltage drops also a massive issue when it's under load. So that would...
Someone's made oven mitts for us in the Discord chat.
Oh, gold. Yeah. Official RTX handling wear.
Yeah. Here you guys go, right here. Nice one from the person that did that in the chat.
Gold. That's funny. Yeah, so I mean that's that. So I don't know if a live stream is worth doing. It wouldn't be the most riveting thing to watch, and I don't expect anyone would actually watch it beyond a few minutes. But if it died, you'd want it to happen at some point during a live stream. Because if we
Yeah.
just tested it on the test bed and it wasn't live and we said it died, it's like it's not really as impactful as actually seeing it running within parameters, running correctly, maybe display the ambient temperature of the room, and then it'd be so shocking if it died within like a 1 to 2 day period. So I don't know that could be quite interesting. I actually had another thought with it. We could do like a RTX to death versus Death Star type video where you build your or the whatever it is that is it, what's the big one you have at the moment? Is it
I've got a Millennium Falcon.
the Millennium
as well.
Falcon? That's it. The Falcon versus the RTX 2080 Ti. Tim could build the Falcon while you've got it streaming in the background and see see which one dies.
Probably me.
What's Ibslice saying about the audio?
Out of sync audio, maybe.
It's a little out of sync. You can adjust that, can't you? on
Yeah,
the
I
fly?
can somewhere. Let me try to figure it out where the setting is kept. Properties? No, not there. Advanced audio properties. Ah, here we go.
But yeah, maybe I'll do a poll in the Patreon thing or something or whatever and see if you guys think we should do a 24-hour or 48-hour stress test with an RTX 2080 Ti card and live stream the whole thing and see if it dies or not. That could be interesting, I think. But unfortunately, Tim will have to do it because I can't do a 24-hour live stream with my internet. That would be quite painful.
The video is lagging behind by about half a second, so I'll increase the... I think that's because there's a capture delay for the capture card, but there's no audio delay at all.
Sure, that
So-
makes sense.
So let's see how that's going now. Not sure whether that's fixed, but I've added minus 100 milliseconds on the audio. Is that what I need? Do I need minus or plus? I want to delay it by 100, right? Yeah, so I want plus.
Yep.
Okay. So that should maybe fix it a bit.
It's either gotten
It's
worse.
It's either worse and now 200 milliseconds better, or it got way worse when I just switched it. So
Well, it's going to be a 20-second delay before anyone can tell us. So,
yeah, we'll continue to tweak that, but the settings will be
Yep.
kept here, which is nice.
NF's Dan's, if that is that Need for Speed Dan's. That'd be funny if it was. I don't know. Anyway, hey guys, do you think Nvidia planned for the GTX 2050 Ti? So do they plan to release it with the current? Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. So basically, the question is, do you think Nvidia plans on releasing entry-level to mid-range 20 series graphics cards? And I saw a question for that in the Q&A, so we might as well discuss it now and then just repeat it in the Q&A for the main channel. But I've thought about this briefly for a few seconds already.
Yeah, nice.
And I don't see how it's possible. It would just be like an RTX 590 type refresh deal.
Yeah, because they're not getting all that much out of 12 nanometer.
Well,
Because
You
the whole
can't-
thing with Turing is that they added all this stuff in there.
the RTX, first of all, the RTX 2070 is a joke. It cannot use ray tracing.
No.
Like, it's
720p maybe.
Yeah, 720p maybe. Even 1080p is disgustingly low for it. Looks so blurry and terrible. It's we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, basically the RTX 2070 is a joke for ray tracing. It's so bad. And now it's just a stand-in for the GTX 1080. It's $500 now. So
Yep.
it's a GTX 1080. That's really it, with slightly better performance in some titles. They've really made it's a bit of an awkward situation. They can really only refresh the 1060 as an RTX, or sorry, a GTX
Well-
2060.
I mean, they can...
They can't make performance much better because then it would just kill the value of the higher end cards because they already had that Pascal tiering.
Yeah, I mean, the lower end cards, they could update it to use the Turing architecture with the RT and tensor cores either not on the die or disabled, because you would still get the benefit of having the simultaneous floating and integer performance, which is where a lot of the performance gains from Turing came. But that
Yeah.
adds die space anyway. So you're talking about potentially manufacturing a bigger chip for a lower end card anyway, because they have to add in that extra integer pipeline
Yeah.
into their design. So what I think will happen is that they will begin the 7nm refresh with the lower end cards, and they did that with the 750 Ti. I think it was.
Yeah, Maxwell.
The first 700 series card was like a Maxwell card, and then they
it was quite a while after the full fleet came in, but yeah, they did that. That's really the only option here, I think.
So I think that they'll sort of go. The first 7nm cards will be in that lower tier product, the 1050 sort of tier. And then you'll see a RTX 3000 series or whatever that will do 7nm on the high end. And you'll get that split for a little while, like we saw with Maxwell being the 700 series cards on 14nm for, was it 14nm? 28nm?
20, yeah. God, I can't remember.
Whatever it was, they did the die shrink on the entry level cards first, and then progressed that up to the 900 series for the full launch. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, especially if they're sort of trying to work out yields on 7nm. You know, making a smaller entry level chip will allow them to sort of figure that out first.
That's about the only thing that makes sense to me.
Because 7nm is ready roughly now. Like TSMC could make chips now. Certainly for Q1 of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that around that time frame, and then a higher end launch using 7nm towards the end of the year, sort of around the time they launched 2000 series this year. But we'll see.
Yeah, there's not many other options because really the RTX 2080 Ti is the only card that makes sense. I mean, I know it's stupidly priced, but it does offer something new that no other card can. And now you've got the RTX 2070 and the 2080, and they're just stand-ins for, well, the 1080 Ti and the 1080.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not... I mean, when those cards are priced the same as the cards that are replacing them, it's not like it's a bad buy. It's just that it's not a better buy. It's not better in any way, really.
Now that they're at the same price, it's not a bad buy. When it was $100, $200 more, it was terrible.
And I mean, you get the issue where, you know, the 1080 Ti, for example, that stock is basically gone or very close to being gone. And the 2080 is probably a little bit more expensive than the 1080 Ti's were selling for at the end of its life. So there is that issue a little bit with, you know, you are getting a 1080 Ti performance for slightly more money. And, you know, I keep seeing a few comments about DLSS, but we've already shown that DLSS...
I think DLSS is more useless than ray tracing.
Useless. The same as just taking your resolution slider, putting it down to like 80%, you'll gain the same performance and it'll look about the same. And then ray tracing, half the frame rate, we showed up to 3x or 4x at 4 times worse at 4K. Like it was unbelievably bad at 4K, which is why I didn't show me running around or trying to play the game in my video, because it was like I could play at 80 FPS, 90 FPS, no problems at on ultra. At 4K with the 2080 Ti, you turn on ray tracing, it's like 15 FPS.
I laughed because a couple of, well, I suppose they would have been NVIDIA fans, were accusing us of testing a known bug in the game with the vegetation to show it.
Yeah.
They're like, it should only be half the performance, not 3 times lower. Oh, sorry.
Half the performance makes it so much better.
They were claiming us of being, claiming that we were AMD fanboys and we were showing the worst case scenario for NVIDIA. It's like, hang on a minute. Like, a week earlier, we tested this section of the game for all GPUs, and we're merely updating a week-old results. So they're accusing us of knowing a week in advance where RTX would perform worst, and they're performing there.
And the issue as well is like, the game has shipped like this. It's not like we're using a special developer early access version.
No,
this is a game that launched for people to play. And some people are going to be playing that section of the game in single player with DXR on. And they're going to get terrible performance. Sure, they might fix it in a couple of weeks, but we have no idea whether they're going to fix it and to what degree. And again, gamers are playing it right now. And even now, when I made that video like last week, even now, there's been no change.
No.
So,
I mean, best case, you're halving your frame rates, which is unacceptable for a couple of flashy
and it doesn't matter if it's half the frame rate. Like, and another thing that we saw a bit on just browsing through Reddit and Twitter were people who were testing it on their own systems and sort of finding that they were playing in sort of 80 FPS 1080p on 2080 Ti with DXR on ultra settings. And that's all well and good. We showed lower performance in the worst case scenario. And sure, you can go and play Battlefield 5 multiplayer and get that performance. Those people aren't lying. But I went and tested some areas, and if you turn DXR off, you're running at the frame cap. You're running at 200 FPS.
Yeah.
So it's still the exact same issue. It's like, sure, you're getting 80 FPS, and that's great. But wouldn't you prefer to play at 200 FPS?
And it's worse than that because you really want frame rates to be fairly stable. I mean, they're obviously going to fluctuate when you walk up to a wall, look at the sky or something like that. But you want them to obviously only dip down to a certain point, and you want them to be fairly consistent when you're moving around the map in the same sort of way.
Yeah, you want like 80 to 100 FPS. You want to stick in that zone.
And DXR, you go from 40 to 120, depending on where you're looking and where you are. So your frame rate, and that's where you really notice your input lag and your stuttering and all that sort of stuff.
When you tank from 60 to 40 FPS, it's very noticeable. I mean, and that's another issue as well with that sort of DXR testing. People play in one area of a map and they're saying, oh, it runs well, like it runs at 90 FPS with DXR on. But because you're just spot testing, you haven't actually looked at what it looks like with it off, there's very little visual difference if you're not in an area that uses the effect. And it still has to raycast.
Yeah.
So, again, you could be running at 200 FPS with very small visual differences. And, Gamers Nexus also has a great video that goes into more depth looking at very specific areas of the map that use DXR and sort of looking at the artifacting issues, which we sort of didn't really go into a lot of detail on. But they had even better shots than I got of like the difference between screen space reflections and DXR looking really noisy and terrible. And again, like if you're running around in a multiplayer game, you are not going to notice whether you're running screen space reflections or running ray trace reflections.
Yeah, and for you to even consider that kind of performance, it has to not only be noticeable and look awesome, but it has to be flawless. It has to be really good, especially when you pay that kind of money.
Better in every way. Sure, you're getting more accurate reflections, but if the reflections are a lower resolution and you can noticeably see like that sort of that specific type of glistening pixeling that you get with the RTX artifacting. I mean,
ray tracing, the whole thing's a joke. It's an absolute bust. It's terrible.
And I'm sure it's fine for content creators.
I don't have a problem saying that. It's really
bad.
Really bad because there is no way you want to spend $1,000+ on a GPU to play at 1080p.
Yeah.
Like 1080p for the entry level, that's fine. 1080p game, I'm not hating on guys that have to play at 1080p. That's perfectly acceptable, especially if you've paid a couple $100 to play there. But the difference between 1440p and 1080p, just on a normal graphics card, that resolution increase, the clarity difference is massive. Like it's so blurry at 1080p compared to 1440p.
I'm assuming you're changing your monitor here too.
Yes,
obviously non-native rendering is bad,
native rendering. Yeah. And then you step up to 4K, and that's a whole new ball game again. It's just that we've always sort of brushed off 4K gaming because it's been 60 hertz and it's too taxing.
I mean, 4K compared to 1440 isn't as much of an upgrade as 1440 from 1080.
No, I totally agree, but it's still a noticeable upgrade.
It definitely is. Definitely.
And if you get one of those ridiculously overpriced 1440p, 144 hertz 4K panels, which I don't recommend you do. But if you had one of those with an RTX 2080 Ti, it's just breathtaking, like how good it looks.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're almost getting to an issue now where game textures haven't really caught up with 4K. Like even Battlefield 5, there's some dodgy texture work in there.
Sure, there are some games.
Hitman 2 looks phenomenal at 4K. Like some of the textures in that game are so crisp.
The textures are good.
Amazing.
Where Hitman's let down by, and I suppose it makes sense because there are a lot of characters, is the character model details, especially the faces and stuff, look like it's 2006.
Yeah.
But that's probably a compromise because there are so many characters.
Yeah, because you're running like 200 guys in the one scene.
So that's a fair enough compromise to make.
But I think Nvidia's run into this issue with ray tracing purely because of how they marketed the card. Because it's
a dud feature anyway, though.
But it's fine to have it in as a proof of concept.
Yeah,
It's fine to sort of, if they had marketed the card saying...
If it just had it. Yeah. It's like, it's got this.
If they said, our 2080 Ti is really fast, like it's 30% faster than the 1080 Ti, if they'd priced it better, they could have said it was a better value proposition, and they could go and say all this stuff like, Turing, we've made all these changes to the architecture, and then like they do with all these other features that they haven't really talked about all that much, like they've got all these rate shading changes. I don't remember the exact names, but you can do some cool stuff with the shading that basically they just launched it in Wolfenstein 2.
I saw that, yeah.
Like that's another feature that was like barely covered. If they'd covered ray tracing like that feature and sort of said,
what was the acronym for it? NAS or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But if they'd covered ray tracing and been like, guys, we've made this card for content, like people doing rendering. We wanted to accelerate ray tracing on our Quadro cards for people running Blender or running any of those programs that want to do more closer to real-time ray tracing, accelerate that process. But for gamers, we've also sort of said, let's take a look at how this works. We've got it as a proof of concept. You can run it. We're not expecting too much at the moment because, real-time ray tracing is pretty taxing, guys. If they presented it like that as a proof of concept, and sort of said, like a lot of the other features that we put into these new architectures, we're not expecting this to be widely used for a few generations, then the entire situation would have been changed massively.
Yeah.
The entire prospect of RTX cards would have gone from the value proposition of DXR making the cards worth it or not to NVIDIA's not even talking about that as a value add. It's just a thing.
Yeah, I think they should have done that, and they could have got away with charging $100 more, maybe $200 for the RTX 2080 Ti, just because it is something a bit special. I just had a quick look at pricing just to touch back on that, which started this conversation. And so the RTX 2070 has come in at the $500 price.
Yep. It did launch around there. There was a few stock issues to begin with, but then stock seems to be okay at the moment.
That's where that is. You can easily there's about 3 or 4 models at that price, so that's not a drama. The RTX 2080 is $50 over the MSRP, or the $700 MSRP for the 2080. Sorry, the 1080.
But that's better than
Ti.
I checked. 750 is at least $50 less than I last checked.
Yep.
So that's coming down.
That's a $50 premium you're paying, which isn't too bad, I suppose. That's all right.
Yep.
And then God knows where the 2080 Ti is at.
Probably out of stock and 1200.
So the 1080 Ti's now are like gone. That's it. They're done. So,
which is disappointing. I mean, there's always the used market for that, but yeah, I mean, I just think
I'm thinking of doing an updated used video.
Yeah, I mean, it's just these launches that these companies do. They think that, like, as Talps, I don't know how to pronounce that, in the chat saying, the RTX launch was all the NVIDIA employees being so smug about how revolutionary RTX was, and it is an achievement to get RTX working at a more accelerated rate. But again, it's all about the sell. It's like you can talk about selling that, saying this is going to be great for content creators, and then put it as an aside that we're working towards this for gaming, but it's not going to be super good now. But the way that they sold it was just bad, and I'm sure that they got advice from their PR team about this. They just stuffed it. They stuffed the launch.
But it was we called it before we even got our hands on the cards. It sucked because we already knew the pricing, so we knew it was going to suck based on that. We knew RTX, it appeared based on the demos that it was going to be far too demanding to actually work at a reasonable frame rate. So those two factors suck. Then third, we knew that hardly any games were going to support it.
Yeah.
So it's not like every game supports RTX. And if RTX improved all games, but it was really taxing, it'd be like, oh, well, you can go back and you can play some games, they look a bit cooler and they're a bit more immersive, and that's kind of cool. But it's like we have it in Battlefield, a game that the least game you'd probably want it in. I'm thinking like, Shadow of the Tomb Raider?
Yeah.
That'll be good. Metro would probably be pretty good, and yeah.
Other games like that. But a fast-paced shooter is not the target for it. I mean, and then they sort of added DLSS on, and that's a whole other story. But it's
well, yeah,
it's kind of a mismatch between what NVIDIA thinks gamers want and what gamers want, because I guess they've sort of thought that gamers will want to play at 1080p 60 FPS with really good effects, but actually gamers want to play at 1080p high frame rate, because a lot of people have high refresh monitors. People want to know at launch how much faster the cards are, they don't want to know about the features.
I'm not sure what the motivation was behind it.
It was strange because we sort of speculated that they were hiding the performance numbers because the performance uplift wasn't that great. But the 2080 Ti actually did have a fairly decent performance gain over the 1080 Ti. Sure, it cost a lot more.
Yep.
But there was actually, they did improve it. It's a faster card. And they didn't talk about that at all. Instead, they went into this DXR stuff, which gamers quickly realized wasn't going to be any good. And it's even then like...
I think that was because it was a con. They were trying to con you into buying it. Because they knew if they had to come out on stage and said it's 30% faster than the GTX 1080 Ti and it costs, what was it, 70% more? I can't even remember the figures now. There's going to be a small amount of people that are willing to pay for 60 plus frame rate at 4K. Most people just go, well, I'll just get a 1080 Ti and settle for 1440p because there's a better range of affordable 1440p monitors anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it is all about the sell, but there's ways to do it and there's better ways to have sold it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I think that's why they did it that way. I don't think it was the right way to do it. Basically, you're saying you'd have preferred a more honest approach.
Well, I mean,
and I think that
I think companies aren't always going to be honest with their marketing. I mean, sure, it'd be great if they were. It'd be awesome if all companies had honest marketing, but let's be honest, they're not going to do it. They're never going to be honest. But there was a way to go about it to sell it better than what they did.
Kind of. The problem is, if they had have said it, if they had have forgot about the price, like forget about making a price comparison, just said it's 30% faster than the 1080 Ti. It's like, okay, that's cool, awesome. People would have got excited for that. And then like, and we have the RTX 2080, and that's just a 1080 Ti. And then we will release an RTX 2070, and that's just a GTX 1080.
Yeah.
And then we may have other cards, which will just be other cards you've been able to buy for 2 years now. So...
I know it's hard for them.
Yeah.
Which is why they did this ray tracing stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's why when we were talking about the 2050 and the 2060, I don't see how those cards are going to exist beyond being mere refreshes.
Yeah.
Because that's really what we've ended up... I mean, the RTX 2070 and 2080 aren't refreshes, but they might as well be. The 2070 in particular. So...
Yeah, I mean... Yeah. They did sort of get themselves in a hard place with this launch.
Well, I'm interested to see what happens next year because we called it as this being a money grab. A stopgap to 7 or whatever nanometer process they go with, whether it's with Samsung or TSMC. But it seemed pretty obvious to us that Pascal was teetering out. They were seeing a dip off in sales and they needed to create some hype and generate some income, some revenue. So they did this.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of still think that this architecture was targeted for 7 nanometers and 7 nanometers didn't quite get there in time.
Sure, that happened to AMD as well, but they still want to push these Tensor cores and RT cores without having to pay a premium or without having to foot the bill, eat up their margins. I don't know. That's what they wanted to do.
They want gamers to foot the bill, not them.
Exactly. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. So right now they've got a period in time where AMD is not competitive. They know roughly when AMD will be competitive because then they'll be able to do what they wanted to do. So they're taking this opportunity now to sell these big, huge GPUs at a massive premium.
And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily purely a money grab on the gaming front because I do think that all these GPUs are designed not with gaming in mind. NVIDIA isn't going and sitting down and designing a GPU core for gaming because the margins are terrible. They're designing these to be used in compute cards. Mm-hmm. So they've obviously designed this architecture with the RT cores and Tensor cores with the simultaneous integer and floating point processing. They've done all of that to make their compute cards better. And I think part of what they've done is sort of they've missed their target for 7 nanometers, sure. So they've got these 12 nanometer cards, but they've done it for the Quadros so that they can start to get those features better used in applications ahead of 7 nanometers. Yep. So even though because a Quadro card costs like $10,000 or something, right? Mm-hmm. The price to performance ratio, people aren't really concerned about that because in that sort of field, people are willing to pay for the fastest thing. It's all about density, processing density, accelerating those effects. So I think some of what they were trying to do is we need to get this stuff out now so that for our next generation on 7 nanometers, we're not a year behind getting that support for compute-related stuff. You get it out now, you can start to get the support. Then when their better products come out in their second generation, they've got a year of support in the compute front, which is going to be much better than the gaming front, or certainly much more important. Because one app using RTX acceleration could be a killer for like the compute field, whereas one game running it is like nothing.
I wonder how well it would work. Yeah, I agree with that. I wonder how well it would work having like an RT core card.
That's just
like a physics card, like how they used to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
I wonder how well that would work.
I think it depends on sort of like how memory resources would need to be divvied up between the two cards. Does it need the shader cores to do some of the stuff? So like if you're having to transfer from shader cores on one card to the RT cores on another card, then you're going to be bottlenecked massively. So.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, pretty much. Do we know if DXR or RTX cards work in SLI with ray tracing enabled? Has anyone confirmed that yet? I don't think it does it?
Well, we have two 2080 Ti's here today.
Yeah, we do today, so we could try it today.
You have to put it in my main system because I've got the 2080 Ti in there at the moment from the build, but we could have a look.
Yeah, Ibsai says you could do the same by running 2 cards in SLI. Yeah, not really what I meant. I meant like a seriously RT core heavy card.
Yeah, like the 2080 Ti has 68 cores down from 72, so the maximum on that die is 72. If they did like 400 RT cores, you'd have to wonder like...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like dedicate an entire die to that. But yeah, as you say, I don't think...
Or a multi-die approach. You could have a massive die of RT, a massive die of, shader.
Well, AMD could do that.
Well, I'm sure NVIDIA's looking into it too. Yeah. I don't think that's an exclusive tech.
In before both 2080 Ti's die. Well,
I've got the Gigabyte model, which isn't a Founders Edition.
We'll make that the primary card.
Well, we've talked a bit about that. Let's talk about the other things we wanted to talk about. Do you want to talk about Xeons or Threadripper?
Xeons or Threadripper? Don't care. Well, one leads to the other, I suppose, in a way. I don't have much to say on the Threadripper thing. It was more just if you had anything else you wanted to add to...
Yeah, so I'm thinking doing a behind-the-scenes video sort of showing a bit more about how Threadripper is going on the editing rig. You probably have seen the build video that went up on the channel a couple of days ago, was it? Yesterday? No, day before?
2 days ago, yeah.
2 days ago. So yeah, as I said, I upgraded from a Ryzen 7 1700X to Threadripper 2950X. It's much faster. And I think we wanted to have a talk a little bit about... we got a few comments, I guess, and there's always been a discussion of, is Intel or AMD actually better for the editing part of the process? Because we know Threadripper is going to demolish Intel, especially on price to performance for the rendering part. It's much faster. And certainly for me, it's 2 to 3 times faster than my 1700X rendering. But on editing, so what have you sort of seen using Intel systems?
When I had my 1950X, I compared that to an 8700K.
Yeah.
And the 8700K was definitely better for the editing process. So things like warp stabilizer in a single instance was faster.
Yeah.
And it was just a bit snappier. And these had the same storage, same everything else, graphics card, the whole lot. Wasn't miles different. It was a little bit better with the 4K footage that we.
So you're talking about like scrubbing through footage, right? And like applying effects.
Sure, applying effects. Playing pause, the whole editing process, all of it seemed a little bit quicker, every part of it.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit quicker. It was running at 5 gigahertz as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't miles different, but it was definitely different. But when it came to encoding, the 1950X was still much faster.
Yeah.
So
you get that trade-off with the editing process?
Yeah, I don't think it sped up the editing process by anything noteworthy, because the slowest part was definitely me being the dragging things around and doing all that kind of stuff. So
I mean, it is frustrating if you press play.
Bottleneck there.
It is frustrating if you press play, it doesn't play instantly, or like you scrub through and you have to wait like maybe half a second for that frame that you scrubbed to appear.
So I guess you could say it was less frustrating than it was a massive performance improvement.
Yeah,
because I hit spacebar. Like, if you've been using it, if you've done however many videos, a couple of dozen videos on one system, when you hit the spacebar, that built-in delay is already you're ready for that. So You just hit spacebar and wait, and then it plays, and you hit spacebar again. You wait 1 second before you click on something, so it's just becomes a built-in sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that. Are you still using the 1950X, or have you upgraded to the
2950X now.
You're still seeing the same sort of delays and stuff?
Oh, like it's not. Some video, it's a bit strange. Like sometimes it doesn't do it, sometimes it does, but it's not like really noticeable. It's not terrible or anything. All I'm saying is a 5 gigahertz 6-core processor, or 5 gigahertz, is like that much better. It's a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, but I found it interesting that you were saying that, because I'd noticed moving from the 1700X to the 2950X that all the editing stuff, every single part of it was faster. Like all the scrubbing, like, and these are all single core applications. And to be fair, my Threadripper is running at like 4 gigahertz most of the time.
Yep.
So when you like editing and stuff, it has a clock speed advantage already over what my 1700X was doing.
Yeah.
Then it gets, latency and cache, memory, everything improvements. So certainly for what I was seeing, scrubbing, manipulating clips, playing, it's all much faster. And from what I'm experiencing, I'd say it's pretty much instantaneous. Not that I've used an 8700K extensively for editing. I've tested it a bit, but
yeah, I only did a couple of videos.
Certainly I'm very happy with the 2950X's editing performance. The encoding performance is obviously massively improved, but editing as well was a big step up in terms of responsiveness. I am running into a few memory-related concerns with the.
Well, I've got 64 in mine. What have you got?
I've got 32, so I need for the
64 would be the minimum.
Yeah, so running single 4K 60 FPS footage in the timeline, playing that back, manipulating it, that's all super smooth and fine. And it's using like maybe 16 gig to play that sort of stuff back. As soon as I'm overlaying, if I overlay 2 clips, it's fine. Overlay 3, it's usually fine. But once you get up to like 4 or 5, there's like a limit to how long you can play that back or manipulate it smoothly. And sort of once you're in maybe like 20 seconds of playback, it just hits a memory capacity limit, and then the performance just goes to shit.
At all.
But that's only with like 3 or 4 clips overlaid. There's no issue at any other time.
Okay.
And that's simply because it has to load in 3 4K 60 FPS 140 megabit files on top of each other.
Yep.
So
I can confirm that 64 gigs fixes that.
Yeah, so with my 1700X, that footage was CPU limited, because like you'd press play and it would stutter like I was going to just say something I probably shouldn't say on the stream, but it was terrible. Like you'd press play and it would be running at like 3 FPS.
Yeah, okay,
like, from the get-go.
Wow.
Whereas on my Threadripper system, I can play it back super smoothly for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then performance dips away. And that's because it just kills the memory.
Yep.
And it's only running at like 50% CPU utilization there. So I've requested 64 gig, and I think that should fix that. But yeah, that's a bit of a talk about...
Yeah, so basically, in my experience, the higher clocked Intel CPUs that also are lower latency as well, with how they access memory and whatnot.
Faster cache as well, I think.
Yep. They're noticeably quicker, but not... it's... I don't know, it's one of those things, if it's noticeable, it is a significant difference, I suppose, but it doesn't really change your workflow that much, because like I said, if you hit spacebar and wait half a second opposed to not having to wait... For general computing, that would be unacceptable. It's like going from a hard drive to an SSD.
Yeah.
But I found it easy to live with. Anyway, that's the difference there for editing. It's not really that massive. But when it comes to encoding, which takes a long time, like our encodes on a Threadripper CPU take at least half an hour for a 10-minute video.
I did the Hitman one, and that was like 50 minutes on Threadripper. It would have been 3 hours on Ryzen.
Yeah, so you're looking at
2.5, 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, so if it was 3 hours on that CPU, you're looking at a similar time on an 8700K. A little bit quicker, but not much. So yeah, it's probably just down to latency for the editing.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
That's probably what's down
all
to.
those little things, memory related stuff, how quick can it access the files, how quick can it sort of process that stuff, but yeah, I mean, I've been,
mind you, this testing on the Intel stuff that I'm referring to predates the Spectre meltdown patches.
Yeah, and Premiere does get updates reasonably often,
but yeah, well, that's true. So this would have been mid last year
Yeah.
2017 when I did this testing. And that was when SSDs absolutely screamed on the Intel platforms. And they don't anymore for a lot of that sort of stuff. So that'd be interesting to go and revisit with the updates and see if there is a noticeable difference now.
Yeah, and I think another thing as well is that... just completely forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I wasn't comparing to second gen Ryzen either. So that was first gen Ryzen versus...
Yeah, that's right. And there is some definite improvements.
So it was, yeah, would have been the 7700. Oh, yeah, no, I think it was the 8700K, so it would have been late last year that I did test it. I did the 7700K as well, and that was also better than Ryzen 7.
Yeah. Oh, the thing I was going to say is that we've seen some people talking about QuickSync acceleration in Premiere.
I've heard that's a bit buggy as well.
And so it is, if it works, it does give you a performance improvement on the 9900 or 8700.
Sure.
But that makes it faster than Ryzen, but doesn't necessarily make it faster than Threadripper from the testing that we've seen.
Okay.
And on top of that, it straight up does not work for 4K 60 footage.
Oh, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't at all.
Oh.
On Threadripper. No, not on Threadripper, on the 9700K.
So why was Harbo Canucks pushing it so much if you can't do 4K? Surely those guys do
It doesn't
4K.
work for 2-pass at all.
Yeah, I knew
And
that.
4K 60 depending...
Wow.
Because I looked at it the other day. I looked at it like just the other day. I put it into Premiere. I was like, I want to see what sort of things you can use the software accelerated encoding for. And 4K 60, yeah, it was grayed out for me. It worked on 4K 30, but maybe I just had my settings configured incorrectly. But it definitely doesn't work for 2-pass, which is what we use.
Yep, I've heard that it's buggy and people have been having a lot of problems with it. Like, I've read, because I was looking into testing it, I've read tons of reports of guys saying they get to like 40, 50% of the encode and it crashes.
Yeah.
Or there's lots of graphical corruption and stuff like that. So I don't have time for that. Screw that. Jardeth says 2-pass master race. Well, Jared's using a 1950X as well, I think. So
Yeah, it's fast.
yeah, I mean, I updated my 1950X to the 2950X, and for the encoding, it's like not noticeable.
Yep.
So, but anyway, good to see that you've got that now. We wanted to do a build off on the channel where we both built the same, basically what Tim built, but do them simultaneously. But I think we should probably do like not necessarily a sponsored video, but maybe the part sponsored, speak to a couple of our contacts and do like a mid-range build off.
Yeah, that would be good.
That'd be kind of cool. We could even go at it from 2 different angles as well, like two mid-range systems. I don't know, one maybe using an NVIDIA GPU, one using AMD, and then maybe an Intel CPU versus an AMD CPU. Mix it up a bit.
It'd be interesting for us not to talk about what components we're going to get and then just source everything ourselves and then see what we've got in the end.
Or get all the parts for 2 systems and put them in a pile, just to pile randomly, and like you just grab a graphics card. That means I have to grab the alternate graphics card. And we just end up with like a random selection of components. It'd obviously work, but it'd be interesting to see what we end up with. So that could be kind of fun to do that as a live stream. So probably more entertaining than the watching the RTX 2080 Ti go up in flames. Oh, could you imagine if it was a live stream and it actually burst into flames?
Oh my god! Imagine if it burst into flames in here while I was asleep or something, and it like burnt down my house.
You'd go from like 1 or 2 viewers to thousands. So anyway, I think that covers the Threadripper stuff. Most of you guys are probably aware that the first generation Threadripper parts are on sale, and they are insane.
They're very good value.
I was thinking about that just this morning when I was reading over a few things, and I saw the Newegg sales. I think I was freaking out when I did my top 5 video, and the 1950X was 600 US.
Yeah.
On Newegg, I think it's 450 US now for a 16-core 32-thread processor. Are you serious? $450 US. Oh, it's
$550.
Maybe
so just drop by 50.
See Amazon. See if it was Amazon. I swear I saw it for 450 somewhere, which is just insane compared to what we were paying just 2 years ago for like a 10-core processor.
550.
Okay,
as
it's
well.
550 then.
But that was up at 600, wasn't it?
600 for
Yeah, it's just dropped another 50.
But even at 600, that's unbelievable. 600 US for that processor.
Yeah, because I mean the 2950X is still.
Okay,
900.
Jared's saying it was the 1920X that was 450. The 1920X was 400 back when I did the video, well over a month ago.
Yeah, that's 450. Yeah, I mean that's still a good
Kerry's
buy.
Kerry's saying it was 450. It was yesterday.
What's that? PC Part Picker has these.
Yesterday it was $450. I swear I saw it for $450. And yeah, the 1700X is $120 US. $120 for a 1700.
Really, that's
X.
good.
Yeah. Well, that's an 8-core, 16-thread CPU. When you think what we're paying for quad cores, 2 years ago, that's just phenomenal.
Oh, they haven't got the individual. Oh, maybe they've got individual pricing if you search for it.
I'm just watching you on the stream jumping around all over the place trying to find it.
Yeah, 450. It was 450 at Newegg.
Yeah, I thought it was. I wasn't going crazy.
So yeah, it definitely dropped down a bit.
It was like a day or something.
Yeah, so it's back up for... Which is odd. That must have been a day before Black Friday, which is tomorrow or even the next day in the US.
If you had have picked up a 1950X for $450, brand new, that's full warranty and everything.
Screaming good deal. That's nearly the same price.
That's half price, basically.
Well, it's nearly the same price as like a 9900K's official price.
It's less.
It's less. It's less than
It's
that,
at least $50 less.
Yeah.
Because the MSRP is actually $500. It's not $488. Yeah. $488's the 1,000 lot price. 1,000 unit price. So you're paying $500 US at MSRP for a 9900K. But you go back a couple of years and look at CPU prices. Like, what were you paying for a 6900? They were $1,000, I think.
Yeah.
$1,000, and that's an 8-core. Anyway, insane. Absolute madness, but you can get pretty amazing computers these days for...
Newegg Business. Oh, it's out of stock, the $450 one on Newegg.
No surprises there. That's an insane buy. But yeah, so some good CPU prices to be had. So we should probably talk about the Xeon thing now. Should I go?
Yep, go for it.
Oh, we've got some new X299 motherboards on the way. God, that's going to be painful. I just got a message then. So there's a new line of X299 motherboards from ASUS, MSI, and all that because of the Skylake X refresh. Yeah. And I haven't even got a Skylake X refresh CPU, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But anyway,
Skylake X refresh is a bit weird. I still think the pricing is just very strange. No price change at all. They're just backing themselves in.
Yeah, it's like $20 off or something. I think up to $50 off. But yeah,
because I mean, even though like the 9980XE is pretty competitive, like on performance, like it's good, it delivers good performance compared to AMD's Threadripper, but it's so much more expensive than a 2950X. Not even factoring in the 1950X at the moment. It's so much more expensive than a 2950X, like a very small performance improvement. It is faster, but it's small. And then compared to the 2990WX, it's like it's faster in some workloads, it's slower in some workloads.
Yep.
And it's still more expensive.
It's the ultimate CPU, as you say, but it still doesn't make sense.
It's one of those things where if you're in a place where time is really important and you don't really care about value, you just want your stuff to be done super quickly.
But you're not rendering.
And you're not rendering necessarily. You may be doing something else.
Something else. You're not Pixar.
So potentially, for example, you're running like Premiere or something and you want that, or you're doing like H.265.
It's not even that good in Premiere. The 16-core version's better. But
But something like that. Say you're encoding like H.265 videos and you want it done quickly. You don't care how much it costs. Then you should buy a 9980XE because it is fast and it is very fast. But for anyone considering value, it still sucks.
Yeah.
And it's strange that even though Intel is faster at the top end, that they haven't at least made their mid-tier products more competitive in terms of price. Like the 14-core, the 12-core.
That's just due to supply.
It's just,
I don't think they can. And they're still selling pretty well anyway because it's Intel. It's like the 9900K though. We're talking about the 9900K is a funny one because we rip on the 9900K, but it is the best desktop CPU. Like there's...
Yeah. It's the fastest.
Threadripper aside, the 9900K is better than Ryzen 7, hands down. It's way better than Ryzen 7. It's more efficient when... Like, if you clock both processors at 4 gigahertz, the 9900K and Ryzen 7, just as an example, the 9900K uses less power and it's faster. Especially in stuff that is, memory sensitive, like gaming or whatnot. It's a better CPU. There's no doubt about it.
It uses less power than the 2700X.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more efficient. It's a more efficient processor. It is better.
Yeah.
It is better in every way, except the price sucks.
Yeah.
It's not worth paying twice as much for. And I think that's where people sort of, well, the Intel fans can't understand my point of view on that one. It's like, yeah, I'm not saying it's not a good CPU, but it's way too expensive. And yeah, it runs stupidly hot when it's effectively unlocked, but it's running way faster than Ryzen 7, so
Yeah.
it's going to get hot.
How much faster is it on average?
For what?
Like productivity?
No, not hugely, but it is a bit.
Yeah.
I don't have
Because
the
it's
exact
clocked a
numbers.
fair bit higher.
Yeah,
on
well,
some cores.
it's essentially the clock speed difference.
Yeah.
So, at the same clock speed for productivity, they're virtually the same. There's not much IPC difference. And
Unless you're talking about AVX. in which case
sure,
it's
yeah,
there.
then there is a fairly substantial difference. But yeah, the 9900K is a great processor. It's just not a great price. It's as simple as that. If it was selling for 350, Ryzen 7 would be in trouble. But then Ryzen 7 is selling for 250 now. So yeah. But it really
I didn't think it used less power than Ryzen 7 uncapped. Like running it on the turbo, max turbo 4.7.
it uses way more power uncapped. Way more power. But what I'm saying is it's a more efficient processor if they're locked to the same frequency.
Oh, right. So you mean if you clock them both at 4 gigahertz, right?
Correct. So
Yeah, okay, now I get
if
you.
you run them both
gotcha.
at 4 gigahertz, the 9900K is not only faster, it uses less power.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's Intel's node advantage.
yeah,
Intel's node's pretty good.
that's what it is. Yeah.
14 nanometer plus plus. As much as people rip on the pluses, they do get pretty good performance out of it, even now, on that node for their lower clocked products, especially in the notebooks.
But people focus on that sort of stuff or how hot they run because they're so expensive, and you expect when you're paying, what is it? I think they're selling for $600 and something now. You expect something that just is awesome everywhere, and it is, in a sense. But yeah, I mean,
the node isn't designed to run 5 gigahertz. It's designed to be super efficient at like 3 to 4.
yeah, and it's super efficient at 4.
Yep.
But anyway, I mean, that's the situation there. Pricing is important. You can't ignore pricing. I laugh every time I see comments of Intel fans trying to troll AMD fans by saying, oh, if you want a cheap, crappy processor, get AMD. But if money's no object, then Intel's always better. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, and I've never understood that about reviews either. Like, there's oftentimes you see reviews that make not much of a discussion about the value proposition of a product.
It's all about value.
And it's like almost every buyer is always thinking about how much money they have to spend on something.
Yeah.
There's very few people out there where money truly isn't an obstacle for these purchases. It's like a tiny amount of people will just be like, I want the best, gaming rig, so I'm going to buy a 9900K.
But you're not, because that's just a stupid argument anyway. You're going to go, I've got so much money, and because I've got so much money, I'm not really interested in getting what's a wise choice. I want to get what's the absolute best, either because I want the absolute best or I want to be able to rub it in everyone's faces and show off that I have the absolute best. So I'm going to get a 9980XE.
Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily faster for gaming, though.
But you're still going to, well, it's like...
What I'm saying, though, is like, the
I know what you're
9900K
saying, yeah.
is the fastest gaming CPU, right?
Yeah.
So someone where that had money isn't an obstacle is actually going to buy it because it is the fastest.
Yeah.
But anyone who is being value conscious is going to go, well, a 2700X is not that much worse, or even an 8700K. It's not that much slower, but I'm saving $200.
Yeah.
So that's what most people are doing. There's that
Yeah.
tiny fraction of people that's like, yeah, I make 200 grand a year. I'm not really concerned. I'm just going to spend whatever to get the fastest stuff in my PC. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get really fast memory, even though I don't really need it. I'm going to get I'm going to get a godlike motherboard. That buyer exists,
Sure.
but is like a tiny percentage of people. I don't understand why some reviewers sort of cater their reviews to that audience that's thinking about what's the fastest, what's the coolest and fastest. Like,
Yep.
This is the best product because it's the fastest, and that's not really how most people operate.
Yeah, I definitely don't. And even if, there's some things that I spend quite a bit of money on, but I don't just get the next tier because it has to offer some sort of value. So, that's how we approach our reviews. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how people can attack us for that. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very odd.
I mean, if you're interested in technical achievements and all that sort of thing, like if you look at a review from Anantech, for example, a lot of theirs are more focused on the technical related stuff. You know, oh, how did they achieve? How did they make this 8-core processor?
I mean, their conclusions always seem pretty down to earth to me as well, though.
Yeah, like I think that's it's always interesting to see a new product that's really fast. You know, oh, like a 2080 Ti, it's a really cool product. It's like, oh, they made it a lot faster. That's interesting. You know, of course, it sucks for value. It's really expensive. You know, it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. You know, like ray tracing that still isn't very good, but it's still interesting. But for most buyers, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Pretty much what they needed to do was make a 900K that went on the LGA 2011 socket that had more PCI Express lanes.
Didn't they already have like a 7800X or something? The 8-core with the...
No, they were the quad cores, but they still had 16 lanes. Or do you mean the Skylake X?
Yeah,
part?
yeah.
Yeah, but that
was
was...
7800X is the 8-core...
That's the 7820X. But
Yeah.
that still uses the mesh interconnect, so it's not a ring bus CPU.
Yeah.
To go to the ring bus, you'd have to go back to Broadwell E, and then that's the 6900.
Yeah, okay.
I think, yeah. But that would, the 900K on that platform with like 40 something PCI E lanes, that would have been pretty cool.
Would have been.
So that would have been
Coulda, shoulda.
well, that would have been something worth releasing, in my opinion. That would have been something that's that would have been kind of cool for content creators, because you could put a heap of M.2 drivers in there, and it'd be the most low latency, highest clock CPU. So it'd be kind of cool to have a point. But with 16 PCI Express lanes, it's like it's just a pure gaming CPU, and that's it, really.
Yep.
And
We should maybe leave the Xeon discussion for live stream part 2 if we do it later.
All right, we'll save that
Because
one.
we usually have nothing to talk about in those.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I've got plenty to say on that one as well. So
Yeah, I'll be multitasking you, but I'll be keeping an eye on the AFL draft, which is tonight as well. So I'll have that on one screen. We'll talk about some other stuff while we're streaming later.
Cool. I'll get a couple of drinks.
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to drive home. Yeah, anyway, I suppose we should just take a couple of... I have not really paid a huge amount of... I get distracted. I'm all over the place, and then I get confused with what I'm saying. So I've tried... for the last half of this, I've just abandoned the chat because I was getting too confused.
Yeah, it hasn't been a whole lot of questions. Most people just talking about what we've been sort of...
I need a
talking
live chat
about.
moderator. Okay.
So, yeah, some discussion about, yeah, if 900K was $400, probably get it. That's probably
Yeah, $400,
reasonable.
that's reasonable for sure. It's kind of like an RTX 2080 Ti situation. It's okay to pay a premium to a degree if you're getting a premium product. And the 900K, in my opinion, is a premium product.
It's like the 8700K. Like, it was never super competitive price-wise with Ryzen for some things, but it was at least a reasonable enough price that it made sense to buy it.
We had no problem recommending it. I gave it a rave review. I
Yeah.
think I called it the King of Gaming or something like that in the title.
It's a good price.
It's a good product.
Good price.
Great
yeah.
CPU. And that's why I don't get the Intel fanboys, how they go berserk at us all the time. I mean, fanboys on either side do that. They're very unreasonable. You know, you're not really going to that crowd. You're not going to fanboys of any type for a reasonable opinion.
I mean, even with the 8700K, I mean, it's for a high-end gamer, that's the buy you do. But for a lot of gamers that are just like, have a GTX 1060 or 1070, then a Ryzen 5 2600 is like super hard to pass up. Super hard. So,
Yeah.
again, like most people are probably going to be more swung to that end of the scale. So, yeah, we try to always be conscious, I guess, of what people are putting in their systems, whether you guys out there actually do generally build high-end systems or whether you're more in the sort of mid-tier like a lot of people are.
Yeah.
I mean, all the data says that people buy 1060s mostly, so...
That's right. That's why people care about like the RX 590 and stuff like that.
The Ryzen 5 2600 is the most popular CPU on our Amazon affiliate links.
Joe Spicy says, on the subject of CPU, what are your thoughts on memory controllers and the issues they face with high-speed memory, especially with DDR5 coming in the next couple of years?
Do they have any issues? I think it's just... At the moment, we're stuck with DDR4. It's got...
Well, the memory controller in Ryzen is weaker than what you see in the Intel processors. I'd put that... There's a few reasons for that. Probably just down to the difference in architectural design.
And the
way
Infinity Fabric
the way
is
the Infinity Fabric
linked into it.
works.
But it seems to be that
And-
AMD's, aren't they working quite closely on DDR5?
They are.
So,
Yeah, we're probably going to see a big gain there. I have no insight on that really. But with Ryzen, like we're talking, it's 2 generations old now. So, and they refined the memory controller and the memory performance in that time. Whereas Intel, how many years have they been using this same design now for?
well, the design's fairly successful for them.
I'm not having a go. I'm more or less saying that they've had plenty of time to refine it.
Yeah, they have. They
Whereas
definitely have.
AMD's had significantly less time to refine their design. So as we see more and more generations of Zen refinements, you'll see memory support and compatibility and all that stuff improve.
I think when a product comes out with a new generation of memory, it will require a new generation of memory controller. So I think it's, they might be still having issues now with DDR4 in their existing design, but who knows what the DDR5 design is going to look at. It's like,
yeah, I mean, they're not having really, wouldn't say issues so much. They definitely had issues for Gen 1.
yeah, well, let's just say it's not at the same level as Intel's controllers still today.
No, that's right. But a lot of the initial stuff as well was motherboards. So, hey Tim and Steve, before we take Ooh, well, for me that's pretty difficult because I've pretty much been a tech reviewer the whole time I've been into tech.
I was mostly covering before this non-PC hardware stuff. So I used to sort of have just a standard sort of mid-range build. I'd stick in like the Core i5 range. I'd have my GPU was usually like, I had a 980 Ti for a while, so I was kind of high-end, but I would never buy at launch. I would wait like a fair while to get that. I'd stick in like 980, 970 territory.
I've almost never... I don't think I've ever had a flagship GPU on my actual main system. So I've got a Vega 56 card in my editing rig. That's fine.
I've got a 2080 Ti.
In more recent years, I've had more higher end systems, but for at least the first 10 years of doing this job, I would have had a mid-range system because the high end stuff I test with. Basically, I've got about 3 or 4 test systems that are better than my own personal rig.
Yeah.
Actually, my set PC is better than all my other rigs. So whatever.
I do find it interesting though, when I'm editing videos, the 2080 Ti utilization's up near like 50%.
So
Doing some stuff in Premiere, it like uses quite a lot of the GPU.
Yeah. You use a lot of effects that I think are accelerated.
Yeah.
So, well, I do as well, but so I think that pretty much brings us
ready to go to Nando's.
Oh, Ibslice better be wrong. I swear.
If he's right about there being a chicken shortage at Nando's,
if there's a chicken shortage, well,
devastated.
I've brought my camera, which I've been vlogging on. You can see I've got my little wind shield, which I didn't have on in the backyard for one of the first ones I did outside, and it was terrible. Anyway, I've got my camera. We're taking it to Nando's, and we will be reporting on this alleged chicken crisis. And I might not make it to the second live stream if there's no chicken at Nando's because I'll be freaking out in the shopping centre.
You'll
see me on the Channel 7 news.
Yep. Having a meltdown.
Yeah, I'll be definitely a bit upset.
I think we'll be okay, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. All right. Well, we will be back. What is it, like 5 hours from now?
Yeah, usually about
5 or 6
hours.
hours.
A bit early, like 6:30 or something.
Okay.
Depends.
Well, we'll post it in the Discord chat and on the Patreon page. So if you guys are still around, 14 nanometer chicken shortage. Hopefully Intel's not manufacturing the chickens. But yeah, so we'll be back in 5 or so hours for another live stream. We'll talk about secondhand Xeon processors, namely for the LJ1366 socket. The X58 stuff. We'll talk about that a bit, and whatever else comes up, Tim will think about something else between now and then.
We always have lots to talk about, so all right, we'll see you in the next one.
All right, see you later, guys.